Good afternoon and welcome to the big show. This is what we call it. It's always the big show. It is the Post-Gazette live daily afternoon show. And of course, I'm Paul Zeise. I drive it every day. And of course, we try and zero in on a lot of different issues and a lot of different things that we go to. I guess I would be remiss if I didn't say Happy Valentine's Day to you. But of course, I'm one of those people that don't really believe in this holiday. I think it's a contrived holiday made up by the greeting card companies, but that's a different story for a different day. I think at the end of the day, if you're celebrating it, you're going to go out or do something fun. Go ahead and have a good time. So there's that. I thought Brian Batko wrote a really interesting story today in the Post-Gazette that I wanted to kind of touch on a little bit. And it is basically about Justin Fields. I think there's a discussion, about Justin Fields having some sort of a renaissance. And while that might be true, the reality is, well, it's not necessarily going to happen. And I think that what Brian Batko did was kind of look at all the guys that have had sort of a rocky start to their beginning of their career and try and find a number of them that have turned it around. And so, he says if Justin Fields is going to rejuvenate his NFL career in Pittsburgh or elsewhere, he'll need to walk an uncommon path. Fields already made one positive career-altering move when he went from Bulldog to a Buckeye in college, but his first chance to choose his NFL destination, he must buck history. It's exceedingly rare, this is the key, it's exceedingly rare for a first-round quarterback who didn't make it to the end of his first contract with his initial team to go on and have major success. And if that makes sense, right? If a team is heavily invested in a player at the most premium position in sports, they're going to make sure they exhaust all possibilities before cutting bait. That's why his own draft class is littered with cautionary tales from Zach Wilson to Trey Lance to Mac Jones, all of whom have a long-term outlook even bleaker than Fields. They appear destined to join the likes of Josh Rosen, Paxton Lynch on the low end, Mitch Trubisky, and E.J. Manuel on the higher end of those ejected from their rookie deals by the teams that took them. The jury's still out, however, on a couple of guys. Sam Darnold is obviously the poster child right now. Sam Darnold is a guy, if you look at him, he's sort of revived his career a little bit when it came to going to the Vikings this year. Now, the question is, was it a 1 year off? Or, and is he going to go back to being Justin or Sam Darnold that we know? Or is it something where he found something? I would tell you that I looked at his last two games, and I would tell you that I think that he probably is a guy who is not really destined to be an elite quarterback. He might be able to duplicate some of the stuff he did early in the season in terms of becoming, a success story, so to speak. But I just don't know. When I look at him, I just don't know that he's going to be able to get over some of the things that hold him back. He's physically, obviously, very gifted. Mentally, he's not so much. And I think that's the thing when I look at him. I feel like he's a guy whose ceiling has probably been reached. So the other guy, and I think this might be a little bit a better example, is Baker Mayfield, except for Baker Mayfield really, it was a divorce that was messy, but he was hurt. So I don't know if it's really exactly the same thing. I mean, I feel like, it's a situation of where the Browns sort of moved on from him. They were trying to make him, see if they can get him to play when he was hurt. It was pretty clear that he was hurt. But I think that he had some measure of success with the Browns, and they moved on from him because the divorce just sort of became really nasty and bitter. But really, it just kind of feels like when you look at Baker Mayfield and he got that second deal or he got that contract for $50 million for 3 years, I mean, I don't know if it's the same thing as what we're seeing with Justin Fields. I mean, Justin Fields has talent. I think he has a chance to be a good player. But I also think that there's a lot of people who really, really believe that, it's automatically going to happen for him. And I just don't think it's going to necessarily be that easy. And I think that's the thing when you look at these quarterbacks in all of these situations. These first round quarterbacks are really sort of a crapshoot. You don't know. You don't know what you're getting from them. That's just unfortunately the problem. You think that, well, you know what, we're going to draft a guy in the first round and he's going to become a good player and all that other stuff. You hope. By the same token, you just don't know. Because I think really, we've seen far too many guys that have been drafted in the first round that just didn't pan out. So the idea that somehow, if you draft a guy in the first round, it's automatically going to happen. I just don't think that's the case. I really don't. I just think it's like one of those things where it's going to be important to remember that Justin Fields has a whole lot to prove. Period. And I think that it's one of those things where it's not necessarily going to be a bad thing. Or a good thing if he's able to move on and become a good player for the Steelers. By the same token, it is something the Steelers absolutely have to do. They absolutely have to do it. They don't have a choice. They have no choice but to sign him and hope that this next contract that they give him, that he lives up to his potential. And so I think that this discussion is really kind of interesting because I don't know that there's necessarily anybody who really fully knows what's going to happen. So I think that, he grew a little bit this year when he played for the first 6 games. Did they stunt his growth? Maybe. Maybe they stunted his growth by the way that they handled him and by the fact that they gave his job away back to Russell Wilson after he was doing well. You know what I mean? Maybe. But I don't know. I don't know that that's really going to, it just really today, it's just, a thing of where the Steelers really are up against it when it comes to him. Now then, yesterday we talked a little bit about, what I call the dueling reporters and their sources with respect to the Trevor Lawrence nonsense. And I think that one of the things that's pretty hilarious is that it happened in some ways with respect to the Pirates today. Because 2 days ago, we were told, that, the sources are saying that, the Pirates are going to do something. They're going to be on the verge of doing something big. They're going to, they're going to try and make a big move before the season. All of that stuff. We were told that stuff. And then yesterday, Ben Cherington basically shot that down and said, well, I guess, but nothing is imminent. Nothing's happening that, there's not a whole lot of things that we say here. There's not a lot of room for us to move and make moves and get better. So I feel like when you look at it from that standpoint, once again, here we are. One guy's sources said that, there's going to be some big move that's going to be made. They're just not sure what it's going to be. And then Ben Cherington says, no, that's not the case. I'll tell you another thing I didn't talk about yesterday when I was talking about, these people lying, these sources, these dueling sources. But I think one of the things that I'm going to tell you is that I think that it's always important to note that these people lie through their teeth. especially when there's something self-serving that they want out there. They lie through their teeth, period. So just because Ben Cherington said it, it doesn't mean that it's true. But I think one of the things that, the Pirates, if you look at their lineup and look at what they're going to try and run out there every single day, it really is going to be a year, I think, where we're going to be very, very frustrated. I just think that you look at the lineup, you look at, areas they could have gotten better. You look at areas that they did get better, and you just have to ask yourself, are they really trying to win? Are they really trying to win? And I would tell you, I don't know that they're trying to win based on the moves that they made. But let's look, take a look at what they have right now and where they're going. I've said it before. Yeah, Spencer Horwitz was their big acquisition. He was their big acquisition in the offseason. They traded for him, and guess what? He was supposed to man first base. And what happened? He's got a wrist injury, which means first base is going to basically be manned by a bunch of guys who are not going to play first base this year when Spencer Horwitz gets healthy. Bad start. Nick Gonzalez, I guess he's fine as a second baseman. You figure he'll get a little bit better, strike out a little less or whatever, make a few less outs. He's going to be fine. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa is a guy whose worst position is shortstop defensively, who's never really proven he can be an everyday player in a lineup that hits. That's your shortstop. Brian Hayes says he's in the best shape of his life. Okay, his back injuries are behind him, I guess. I don't know if they are or they aren't, but that's what he's saying. I'm just saying, when you look at this lineup, you got Reynolds and Cruz in center and left. I get it. Maybe, Reynolds moves to right, but you got Tommy Pham and Adam Frazier, battling for a spot. How good are you? How good can you actually really be? And I think it's not, it's not an unfair question to ask, to be honest. But I think that the Pirates are deluding themselves, and they want to delude us into thinking that they are actually going to, make some kinds of move or, one of the standard lines that comes from the Pirates all the time is that, we're always looking to upgrade. We're always looking to do this. Well, that's not actually doing this. And so when I, read 2 days ago that, they're likely to make a big move, my thoughts are, okay, what's the big move? And I've heard a number of different theories. The latest one I heard was Taylor Ward from the Angels. I just don't know. It's one of these things where you have to, read between the lines. And when I read between the lines, it's very clear to me the Pirates are not going to make a big move. This roster is what it is. There's not going to be a big shakeup. It's just not the way they do things. And I think that it's fair to look at the Steelers and look at the Penguins and look at the Pirates and say they have all very different philosophies, but right now they're all at the same place. The Steelers are a little ahead of the Penguins and the Pirates because the Steelers can still make the playoffs. But they're not a team where you look at it and say, boy, the future is really, really bright for this group. Just not the case. And that's just, to me, I think what if you look at the Pirates, this should be the year where you're saying, boy, the future for this team is bright. But I'm not sure why. You've got a pitcher who's really, really good, and that's about it. You want to tell me that Jared Jones is really good? Okay, you've got two pitchers. But your everyday lineup that you're running out there is not good enough. You're probably not good enough at shortstop. You're obviously not good enough right now at first base. You're probably good enough at catcher. You're probably good enough at least defensively at third base. But to me, there's a number of different places on this team that they're not good enough and they're not going to address. That's what's troubling to me. That's what makes it really, really difficult for me to stomach and for me to really try and come to this conclusion that this is a team that's trying to win. Meanwhile, the Penguins, they're a team that have basically exhausted their opportunities to try and win. They've exhausted them. They've basically gone way above and beyond what they should have. And all that other stuff. Because what they did was they basically made it so that they gave Sidney Crosby every opportunity they gave Sidney Crosby to try and win another cup. You can't blame him for that. When you've got an all-timer like him, I mean, that's just, a no-brainer. But now it's time for them to acknowledge it and move forward that they are done. They're done. Period. And that's the way I look at it. You know what I'm saying? They are done. Oh my goodness! I'm looking at this. There's I guess there was some shooting. There was a shooting at the Super Bowl parade. This just came across my desk here. That's obviously not ideal, but I just don't understand it really from this standpoint. And I think that why do people do that? You're out celebrating, having a good time. People are feeling good about the Eagles and everything else. And then you got some knucklehead that goes and shoots the place up. It's absolutely stupid. It really is. And so I just don't know. I don't understand, what you get out of that. By the way, the game's always on at Archie's. Get down to Archie's on Carson Street. Archie's, home of 80-cent wings Monday through Thursday, home of the Paul Zeise grilled cheese sandwich, home of also you can go and watch every game there. You can go watch all of the hockey that's going on right now. There's a lot of different things you can do at Archie's and have a good time. And when you get there, say hello to Archie for me. Okay, my train of thought. I wanted to transition to Pitt basketball. It's Friday. They play tomorrow. Let's talk about Pitt basketball for a little bit. When Scott Barnes hired Kevin Stallings, it was an absolute disaster. From the first day that it happened, Kevin Stallings showed up at a press conference. He walked in. He didn't know anybody, and it was one of the most contentious press conferences I've ever been a part of. And the people at Pitt never embraced him, and the people around the program never embraced him, and a lot of alum never embraced him. And the next thing you know, the program that Jamie Dixon had built plunged into a mess. So I'm looking at that and I say, okay, this was sort of what was handed off to Jeff Capel. I mean, he called it a dumpster fire, and it was. And they had some, minor NCAA infractions. They had all kinds of issues when he took over. And they had gone, 0-16 or 0-18 in the ACC. I mean, it was a mess. And so when I look at it, I'm willing to say, okay, the first year was just about sort of trying to, build a little bit of the talent base and, trying to get the program back on track. The second year, was the COVID year. And so obviously they had to do a whole lot of different things in recruiting that they hadn't done before and all that other good stuff. The third year is when I say, okay, now let's try and start to see if there's a move upwards or forward or whatever. And it just didn't happen. His fourth year there, now, expectations should have been reasonably high. They finished in 11th place again. And, he'll even say it because he said it on his one podcast. You know what? If he didn't have such a big buyout, he would have been fired. He knows that. The next year, Blake Hinson basically saves his job. And they, finish tied for third. They get to the NCAA tournament. They win 24 games. And then last year, you could basically say there are some people that say, well, they should have gotten in, but they didn't. Which is why it was so important for them to get in this year. And right now, there's just not that many opportunities for them to get in. I mean, I'm pretty sure the only game they have left that will mean anything on their resume unless they lose is at Louisville. And if they win that game, then, okay, you have an opportunity maybe if you win a game or two in the ACC tournament to get to the NCAA tournament. But if he doesn't get there, my thing is you can take the first 2 years and throw them out. But it's still a situation of where he's going to have 5 seasons since the first 2 years where he only made the NCAA tournament once. That's it. And so something is going to have to change. Something is going to have to give. Something is going to have to move forward. And I don't understand it. I really don't. But I know this, something has to change. Like tomorrow they play Miami. You know what? If they lose to Miami, it's over. I mean, you can't lose to Miami. They've got way too many bad teams on their schedule now. Then they can't go and get a resume building win right now. They just can't. And I think that's the issue. They have to go find, something in the off season to change what has gone on here, where they've collapsed again. It used to be the ACC. You know what? You could sort of sputter in the ACC, and it was a strong enough league that it could still pull you across the finish line. That's not the case right now. I mean, I've seen all these projections, and I don't really study the bracketology nonsense like some people do, but I'm looking at the ACC and I'm saying to myself, this is a league that might have 3 teams in the tournament, which would be an embarrassment. Now, I don't think they'll do that because, again, they got to fill all the spots. 68 spots is a lot, but I don't think Wake Forest is a lock. I don't think SMU is a lock. Stanford is definitely not a lock, and then it's downhill from there. I think Clemson is probably going to be in, absolutely. Louisville probably is going to be in because they've got enough good wins, and Duke. I mean, if this is a 3-bid league, then the league has failed. Because when they put the league together, it was to be a super league. It was to be a league where they would get 10 or 11 teams in the NCAA tournament. And, some people have asked me, well, what's going on with the ACC? And I'll tell you, one of the things that's gone on, very simple. Coach K retired. Rick Pitino got fired. Jim Boeheim retired. Roy Williams retired. Mike Bray ran out of gas. Tony Bennett is now retired. I mean, you're talking about a who's who of the top, college coaches, not just right now, but of all time. And now you've lost Leonard Hamilton and Jim Larrañaga as well. So I guess my point is, they've got to sort of find, those coaches that are going to be sort of the face of the league and build on them. I mean, John Shire obviously is at Duke. If you're at Duke, you should win. And he's done a reasonably good job of recruiting. But to me, I'm looking at the ACC and I'm saying to myself, this is a league that really is in trouble. It's a league that really needs to figure out an identity. I mean, you look at the SEC is so much stronger than the ACC. And part of it is because they put a lot of money into and resources into coaches. You look at the ACC right now, I mean, honestly, John Shire, we don't know if he's going to be an elite or a great coach. I think, obviously, he's doing really reasonably well. Brad Brownell, He is what he is. They're good enough, but not really good enough. I think Andy Enfield at SMU, with their money and their backing, they should be okay. But does Andy Enfield move the dial? Part of the problem you have at North Carolina is you've got a Hubert Davis who is an alum, but he's clearly not good enough. But they'll probably stick with him for a couple of more years just because he's one of theirs and try and figure out how to help him out. Syracuse, obviously, it's been a disaster with Adrian Autry. I can't imagine they don't fire him this year. But that's not an easy job to find somebody. Jim Larrañaga had Miami in the Final Four. That's not an easy job either. They've got to find the right person to take that job. So I'm looking at the ACC and I'm saying the problem that Pitt has, and really a lot of these teams have, there's not as many opportunities for them to win games and move them into the NCAA tournament. In the SEC, pretty much every night you're going to get a quad 1 or quad 2 win if you win. In the ACC, that's not the case. There's some bad teams in the ACC. And so Pitt losing some games. I think one of the biggest things about it is if you look at what they have left on their schedule, go through it. Tell me where the resume wins are. Miami, Syracuse, Notre Dame, Georgia Tech all stink. Beating them means nothing. Beating NC State means nothing. Beating Boston College means nothing. Those are 6 wins you better get if you're Pitt. You better get those 6 wins. And if you do that, that's 20. And you will be then, 11-8 in the ACC. And then, you know what? You need to beat Louisville. You beat Louisville, you get to 12-8 in the ACC, and 21-10, you might have a shot, to get to the NCAA tournament. But I will tell you this much right now. There's not a whole lot you can build on because all these teams stink. The only thing Pitt can do is hurt their resume chances with these games by losing one of them. And if they lose one of these games, it's over. And at that point, I think if you're Alan Green, you have to take a long, hard look at the program and figure out what's next. That could be just you hire a general manager and you make Jeff change his coaching staff, and you do the things you do on the sort of, as a prelude to, hey, you got one more year to make this right. But I don't think it's going to be really, really hard. I don't think it's going to be very easy at all. I just don't, to get this thing back on track, because the ACC is not the asset that it once was. And I don't think people really fully understand. It might not ever be that again. As much as they, like to, put their chest out and act like they invented basketball in the ACC. The reality is, I look at leagues like the Big East is better than the ACC right now. The Big Ten is better than the ACC. The Big 12 is better than the ACC. The SEC is much better than the ACC. The ACC's got a real identity crisis right now. And it stems from the fact that they don't have the coaches they used to have. When you lose 4 Hall of Famers, Tony Bennett is basically going to be a Hall of Famer. Mike Bray wasn't a Hall of Famer, but he's very close. I think Leonard Hamilton, is a guy who has, 500-600 wins or whatever he has. Jim Larrañaga obviously took George Mason to the Final Four. He took Miami to the Final Four. He's been a great coach for a long, long time. You can't replace those guys. It's hard to. And, for Jim Boeheim, we talk about him. We talk about Pitino. We talk about Boeheim. I mean, it's really difficult. I think if you're the ACC, you have an identity crisis right now, and you need to figure out who it is that you want to be as a basketball basketball conference, and go from there. So we'll see what it all looks like. But I'm going to tell you, if they lose tomorrow, it's over. Absolutely over. There's no coming back from losing to Miami. I mean, there's some people that think it's over now. I don't. I think if they win out, which would mean they have to win at Louisville, I think they'll be, they'll be right on the cusp of it, and maybe one win in the ACC tournament might help them. But reality is, if they lose tomorrow or any of their next 4 games, it's over. They're not going anywhere. And so I think for the future of the program, the future of Jeff Capel, and the future of everything else, I mean, it's really, really important that they finish this the right way and figure out a way to get to the NCAA tournament. As I said at the start, happy Valentine's Day. We'll do it again on Monday. Enjoy your weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.